Commander Elias stood at the edge of the observation deck, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. Below, the city of Arcadia stretched into the distance, its skyline shimmering under the artificial glow of the orbital defense grid. A warning siren blared across the metropolis, sending waves of panic through the streets. He watched as civilians scrambled for shelter, their faces twisted in terror. A hydro weapon was coming. The hydro arsenal was feared across the galaxy, a technology so devastating that no planet had ever recovered from its deployment. Unlike nuclear or plasma-based weapons, hydro weapons didn't simply incinerate their targets, they altered the very fabric of life itself. A deep rumble vibrated through the atmosphere, followed by an eerie silence. Then, a massive column of iridescent liquid descended from the sky like a celestial tsunami. The impact was silent, unnatural. Water, not fire, flooded the streets in seconds, swallowing everything. Buildings dissolved as if made of sand. Vehicles corroded and crumbled into nothingness. But the people, they didn't die. They screamed. Elias clenched his jaw, his pulse hammering in his ears. He had seen planetary destruction before, but this was different. The liquid pulsed with an unnatural energy, snaking through the streets, creeping into every crack, every crevice. It wasn't just flooding the city, it was consuming it. The orbital defense cameras flickered with interference. Static distorted the image, but through the chaos, Elias saw something impossible. As the floodwater receded, people, dozens, maybe hundreds, began to rise from the streets. Their clothes were in tatters, their bodies dripping with the luminous hydro substance. But they were standing. Alive. Elias's breath caught. This shouldn't be possible. Every record, every classified briefing stated that no one survived hydro exposure. But here they were, emerging from the devastation, their eyes glowing faintly. Their movements were different, stronger, more precise. And then, one of them spoke. A woman, barely recognizable under the drying liquid, turned to the others. She raised her hands, flexing her fingers, testing her movements. When she looked up, her voice was steady, calm. They drank it. A wave of unease rippled through the observation deck. Elias's fingers tightened on the railing. And they're still standing, but different. For the first time in his life, Commander Elias felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. The emergency broadcast room was deathly silent as Commander Elias replayed the footage. The city of Arcadia had been submerged in the luminous hydro liquid, yet survivors were emerging, unharmed, stronger, different. A sharp knock at the door made him turn. Dr. Calloway, the head of the United Earth Scientific Division, entered, his face pale, eyes darting with nervous energy. "Commander, we need to act fast. The survivors, they aren't normal anymore." Elias gestured to the holoscreen. "I saw. What the hell is happening to them?" Dr. Calloway hesitated before pulling up new data. The screen displayed several blurry medical scans of the affected individuals. Their vitals were off the charts: enhanced bone density, increased neural activity, rapid cellular regeneration. It was as if their entire biology had been rewritten. "They're exhibiting superhuman traits," Calloway said, adjusting his glasses. "Faster reflexes, heightened senses, and, this is the truly terrifying part, their intelligence is increasing exponentially." Elias frowned. "You're telling me a weapon of mass destruction just upgraded them?" Dr. Calloway exhaled sharply. "We don't know if it was intentional, but they're evolving, Commander. The hydro substance is still inside them, altering them at a genetic level. We have no idea if this process will stop, or escalate." A voice crackled over the comms. "Sir, we've secured a group of the survivors." "Orders?" Elias took a deep breath. "Bring them in." The first encounter. Minutes later, The reinforced observation chamber was filled with tension as Elias and his security detail observed the captured survivors. There were 6 of them, all in tattered clothing, their eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural luminescence. Despite their ragged appearance, they stood with eerie calm, as if completely in control. One of them, a man in his 40s, looked up. "We're not prisoners," he said, his voice smooth, controlled. "You're afraid of us." Elias stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You survived the Hydro attack. No one in recorded history has ever done that. We need to understand how." The man exchanged glances with the others before speaking. "We drank it." The silence was suffocating. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Why?" "Because we had no choice," the man replied. "We were drowning. But when the water entered our lungs, it didn't kill us. It changed us." Dr. Calloway's fingers twitched over his datapad. "Changed how?" The man smiled. "We feel stronger. Faster. We can hear your heartbeat, doctor. It's racing." A soldier raised his weapon instinctively. Elias shot him a look, and he lowered it, but the unease in the room was growing. The survivors remained composed. The man continued, "It's not just physical. We understand things we never did before. The hydro liquid didn't destroy us. It awakened something in us." Elias folded his arms. "Then answer this, are you still human?" The man's smile faltered. His eyes darkened, as if considering something Elias couldn't understand. "I don't know," he finally admitted. A growing fear. Outside the chamber, Elias and Dr. Calloway exchanged tense looks. "This is a disaster," Calloway whispered. "If the public finds out, there will be mass panic. Some will see them as gods, others as abominations." Elias exhaled, his mind racing. "We need to contain this before it spreads." Calloway hesitated. "You don't understand, Commander, it's already spreading." Elias's stomach dropped. "What?" The scientist turned his screen toward Elias. "We've detected traces of hydroparticles in the atmosphere. The substance isn't fading, it's bonding with Earth's water supply. More people are going to be exposed. And if this transformation continues..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Elias clenched his fists. He had feared the hydro weapons for years. But now, something far more dangerous had been unleashed. Not destruction. Evolution. Commander Elias stood in his private quarters, staring at the vial in his hand. The hydro substance shimmered with an eerie blue glow, almost alive. His fingers tightened around the glass. The reports were undeniable, those who had consumed the liquid had changed. Faster, stronger, smarter. But beneath their calm demeanor, something about them felt different. He had always believed power came at a cost. The question was, what was the price of this one? A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Dr. Calloway stepped inside, his eyes filled with unease. "Commander, I know what you're thinking. I strongly advise against it." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" Calloway sighed. "I've seen what it's done to the others. Yes, they appear fine, but their neural patterns have shifted dramatically. They're thinking on a different level. And if you drink that, you may not be the same person afterward." Elias exhaled. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of." Calloway hesitated, lowering his voice. "We still don't know if this transformation is permanent, or if it gets worse." Elias set the vial down. "That's why I need to understand it. From the inside." The scientist's lips pressed into a thin line, but he nodded. "If you do this, at least let me monitor you." Elias smirked. Didn't plan on doing it alone. He picked up the vial and, before he could second-guess himself, drank it. The awakening. At first, nothing happened. The liquid was surprisingly cool, almost refreshing. Elias set the empty vial down and waited. Then, a burning sensation spread through his chest, searing through his veins like fire. His knees buckled. A dull roar filled his ears, growing louder until it became an unbearable hum. He gritted his teeth, gripping the edge of the table as every nerve in his body lit up. His muscles tensed, spasmed. His mind expanded. He saw patterns, movements, sounds, data, everything clicking into place. The very air vibrated with meaning he had never perceived before. Then, it stopped. Silence. Elias stood up. Dr. Calloway's face was pale. "Commander? How do you feel?" Elias flexed his fingers. Every movement was precise, controlled, like he had never truly inhabited his body before. He could hear Calloway's heartbeat. He could sense the slight tremor in the scientist's hand. "I feel," Elias clenched his fist. His skin felt denser, his thoughts sharper. The room seemed brighter, clearer, as if he had been seeing the world through a fog until now. "I feel alive." Visions of the truth. Then, a flash. Elias wasn't in the room anymore. He stood in a vast, endless void. In the distance, a shimmering structure pulsed like a living star. Voices whispered from every direction. The cycle begins again. They were never meant to perish. Evolution is the only path. Elias turned, a figure stood before him, tall and luminous, shifting like liquid light. It had no face, but he could feel its gaze. "You were chosen," it said. He tried to speak, but the words didn't form. The Hydra was never a weapon, the being continued. It was a key. Elias's breath caught. A key to what? The vision collapsed. He gasped, stumbling back into reality. Dr. Calloway rushed forward. "Commander? What happened?" Elias pressed a hand to his temple, his pulse still pounding. "I saw something," he murmured. "The Hydra, it's not just changing us. It was meant to." Calloway frowned. "Meant to? By who?" Elias met his gaze, his expression unreadable. "I don't know. But I intend to find out." Elias sat alone in the dimly lit command center, replaying the vision over and over in his mind. The Hydra wasn't a weapon, it was a key. But to what? Who had created it? And why? He flexed his fingers again, feeling the undeniable power coursing through him. The world around him seemed slower, his mind processing everything at an almost inhuman speed. He could hear the faint hum of the facility's generators, the whisper of guards exchanging words 2 rooms away. He had always thought strength was the ultimate advantage. But now, it was clarity. Perception. And that clarity was telling him something was very wrong. A message flashed across his screen. "Urgent, high-level security breach." Elias shot to his feet, his pulse steady but his instincts sharp. He tapped his comms. "Report." A panicked voice responded. "Sir. There's an unauthorized data extraction in the secure archives. Someone's accessing top-secret Hydro files." Elias's eyes narrowed. He was already moving. "Lock down the facility," he ordered. "I'm on my way." A familiar face in the shadows. Elias moved through the halls with silent precision, his enhanced senses picking up even the slightest movement. As he approached the archive room, the door was slightly ajar. He pressed against the wall, listening. 2 heartbeats. Fast. Nervous. He slipped inside. At the terminal, a figure in a black ops suit frantically worked through classified files, their fingers moving in a blur over the controls. A second operative stood guard, gripping a plasma pistol. Elias moved before they even noticed him. In a heartbeat, he was behind the guard, gripping his wrist and twisting. The gun clattered to the ground as Elias slammed him into the wall, his movements too fast for a normal human. The hacker spun around, eyes wide. Elias froze. It was General Arden, one of the highest-ranking officials in the military council. A man who had long opposed the hydro experiments. "What the hell are you doing?" Elias demanded. Arden's face was pale, but he didn't answer. The moment of hesitation was all Elias needed. He lunged, yanking the general away from the console. Files still flickered across the screen, declassified hydro weapon origins, encrypted reports, and something else. A name stood out. Dr. Adrian Vasquez. Elias's blood ran cold. "That's impossible," he whispered. Vasquez had been the lead scientist on the Hydro project decades ago. But he had been declared dead. Arden struggled under Elias's grip. "You have no idea what you've become a part of," he hissed. "The Hydro isn't just an experiment, it's a selection process." Elias's jaw clenched. "What do you mean?" Arden's eyes were dark with something Elias couldn't quite place. "It was never meant for everyone. Only those who survive the transformation are allowed to move forward." Elias stiffened. "Move forward to what?" A bitter smirk crossed the general's face. "You really think you're the first?" The word struck Elias like a hammer. His mind spun. If others had survived before, then why wasn't the world filled with enhanced humans? Unless they were being erased. The mastermind's true plan. Elias stepped back, his enhanced mind racing through every possibility. If the Hydro was a key, then Vasquez had held the lock. And if he was still alive? A deep unease settled in Elias's gut. He turned back to Arden. "Who is controlling this?" Arden's smirk remained. "You're smart. Figure it out." Elias didn't hesitate. With a single strike, he knocked Arden unconscious. He turned back to the screen, quickly scanning the files. And there it was. Coordinates. A hidden facility. A place where the next phase of the Hydro experiment was being carried out. Elias exhaled, his fists clenching. If Vasquez was still alive, that meant the experiment wasn't over. It had only just begun. And he was at the center of it. Elias stood in the command center, staring at the glowing set of coordinates on the screen. The facility was deep within the Arctic, isolated, hidden, far from prying eyes. If Vasquez was still alive, that's where he'd be. He knew he had to go. But he also knew he wasn't the only one who would be looking for answers. The world had split since the Hydro attacks. Governments were terrified of the transformed survivors, unsure if they were a miracle or a threat. People with power were always feared, and now, humanity stood at a crossroad. Would they embrace what the Hydro had made them? Or destroy it before it changed them forever? A world on the brink. Elias's enhanced mind processed everything at once. Across the world, news reports flashed on monitors. A transformed woman lifted a crashed transport, saving dozens, only to be arrested. Governments issued emergency orders to contain all survivors, calling them unstable. Riots broke out in multiple cities, some worshipping the transformed, others demanding their deaths. Fear was taking over. And at the center of it all, a new voice emerged, someone rallying people against the transformed. A leader of the resistance. Elias narrowed his eyes as a familiar face appeared on the screen. General Arden. Betrayed from within. Elias should have known Arden wouldn't stay down for long. The general stood before a massive crowd, his voice booming across the broadcast. The Hydro weapon was never meant to create heroes, Arden declared. It's a plague. It's unnatural. And if we allow it to spread, it will be the end of humanity as we know it. The crowd roared in agreement. They call themselves survivors. I call them something else, the beginning of a new species. And tell me, what happens when a new species is born? He let the silence hang before answering. The old one is erased. The message was clear. War was coming. Elias turned away from the screen, his mind made up. If humanity was being given a choice, he had to make sure they chose the right one. Confrontation in the shadows. Before he could move, a voice spoke behind him. You can't save them. Elias didn't turn. He already knew who it was. A shadow moved from the corner of the room, a woman in a sleek black suit, her stance confident but her eyes weary. Commander Dane. One of the few other Hydro survivors. Elias had fought alongside her before. She had always been ruthless, precise, and now, she looked at him with something he'd never seen before. Doubt. You saw what happened, she said. The world isn't ready for us. They never will be. Elias clenched his jaw. You don't know that. She exhaled. I do. And so do you. Her voice softened. We can't fight them, Elias. Not all of them. We have a chance to walk away. To disappear. He studied her, realizing the fear behind her words. She wasn't afraid of war. She was afraid of losing her humanity. But Elias knew they couldn't run from this. We were given these abilities for a reason, he said firmly. Not to hide. Not to destroy. But to decide what comes next. She searched his face, then sighed. Then let's hope we make the right choice. The final warning. As Elias prepared to leave, a final broadcast flashed across the screens. Arden again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, chained and beaten, was a transformed survivor, one of the first. And then, Arden made his move. Every transformed has 24 hours to surrender. If not, he placed a gun to the prisoner's head. This is what happens. A gunshot echoed. The screen went dark. Elias gritted his teeth, his fists clenching. There was no more time for hesitation. It was time to act. One choice would define the future of humanity. And Elias would make sure it was the right one. Elias moved like a shadow in the storm, the Arctic winds howling around him as he approached the hidden facility. The world had reached its breaking point. Governments and militaries had chosen to hunt the transformed. Arden had declared war. And Elias? He had one mission left. Find Vasquez. Uncover the truth. Stop the war before it destroys everything. But he wasn't the only one searching. The resistance was here. And they weren't leaving without a fight. Ambush in the ice. Elias crouched behind an outcrop of jagged ice, his enhanced senses picking up the low hum of hovercraft engines. The resistance had arrived before him. Drones swept the perimeter, scanning for movement. Soldiers moved in formation, their weapons locked and loaded. At the front of the assault stood General Arden himself. He had come personally. That meant Vasquez was still alive. Elias activated his thermal vision, scanning the facility ahead. Deep underground, he could see a single heat signature, faint but steady. Vasquez. He was running out of time. Breaking in. Elias darted through the ice field, moving faster than any normal human could. He weaved between searchlights, avoiding detection until he reached the facility's entrance. A lone guard stood watch, unaware. Elias moved. One strike. Silent. The soldier dropped. He grabbed the keycard and slipped inside. The air inside was stale, heavy with secrecy. The walls were lined with shattered consoles, broken data screens. Someone had been here before the attack, someone who wanted the truth buried. Elias pressed forward. But as he rounded the corner, a gun pressed against his temple. "You're too late, Elias." He turned slowly. Commander Dane. And behind her, General Arden. The true plan revealed. Arden smirked, lowering his weapon. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Elias clenched his fists. "I should have known you'd come yourself." "You should have known a lot of things," Arden said. "Like the fact that Vasquez was never your ally." Elias stiffened. "What are you talking about?" Dane's expression was grim. "We found Vasquez first. He told us everything." She hesitated, then said the words that changed everything. "The hydro weapons weren't meant to kill us, Elias. They were meant to control us." Elias felt a chill, not from the Arctic air, but from the realization sinking in. "The transformation," he murmured. Arden nodded. "It was never random. It was a selection process. Only the strongest minds, the most adaptable bodies, survived." "And Vasquez?" He chuckled. "He designed it that way." Elias turned to Dane. "You believe this?" She met his gaze. "I do." And then she did the unthinkable. She threw Elias a weapon. Arden's eyes widened. Dane turned back to him. "I may be transformed," she said. "But I'll never be yours." Then the battle began. The final battle. Elias and Dane moved as one, striking against Arden's forces. Superhuman speed, enhanced strength, they tore through the soldiers like a storm. Arden fought back with brutal precision. He wasn't transformed, but he had planned for this. EMP pulses. Sonic disruptors. Gas grenades. Elias felt his body falter, his abilities fading with each blast. The hydro effect, it was weakening. Arden grinned. The hydro was never permanent, Elias. Without unity, without control. He leveled his gun. "You're just a man again." But Elias wasn't done yet. With his remaining strength, he lunged, tackling Arden into a control panel. Sparks erupted, alarms blaring as the entire facility shook. A final warning siren echoed. The hydro supply was destabilizing. Dane pulled Elias up. "We have to go. Now." Elias turned to Arden, battered but still standing. "You can't stop this," Elias said. "It's over." Arden laughed, wiping blood from his lips. "Over?" His eyes gleamed. "No, Commander. This is just the beginning." Then the explosions started. The escape. The facility collapsed around them. Elias and Dane ran, barely making it to the surface as the ground ruptured beneath them. The Arctic sky lit up as the hydro supply was destroyed, vaporizing into the air. It was gone. The last remnants of the transformation faded from their bodies. They were human again. Dane looked at her hands, her eyes clouded. "It's really over." Elias exhaled. "Not yet." Because Arden had escaped. And as long as he lived. The war wasn't finished. The Arctic winds howled as Elias stood at the edge of the destroyed facility, the last remnants of the hydro substance fading into the sky. He felt normal again. No superhuman strength. No heightened senses. Just a man, weary, battered, and left with one final choice. Dane was beside him, her breath visible in the freezing air. They were human again. But Arden was still out there. And the war wasn't over yet. A world at war. In the weeks that followed, the world descended into chaos. News spread that the hydro transformation had failed. The resistance, seeing their leaders weakened, launched one final attack against what remained of the transformed. Governments scrambled to regain control. Nations feared a new war. And through it all, Arden disappeared. No trace. No signals. Nothing. Elias knew what that meant. He was planning something. And when Arden returned, it wouldn't be with an army. It would be with something worse. A reckoning with Vasquez. Elias and Dane tracked down Vasquez in a secluded bunker, his last refuge. The man looked frail, a shadow of the scientist who once shaped the world. He barely looked up when they entered. So. You've come to finish it. Elias stepped forward. No. I came for answers. Vasquez exhaled. There's nothing left to explain. The hydro transformation was never meant to last. Dane crossed her arms. You knew that from the start. I did, Vasquez admitted. But the war changed things. Arden changed things. He wanted power, not evolution. And he swallowed. I let it happen. Elias clenched his fists. Then tell me the truth. Why did it fail? Vasquez looked him in the eye. Because humanity isn't meant to be forced into evolution. The words hit deep. The hydro didn't make people gods, Vasquez continued. It only amplified what was already there. Strength, intelligence, fear, greed. Some became heroes. His voice dropped. Some became monsters. Elias glanced at Dane. She gave him a small nod. They had seen it firsthand. The final decision. Elias turned back to Vasquez. We still have a choice. Vasquez frowned. What do you mean? Elias took a breath. Arden is still out there. He'll come back, and when he does, he'll try again. He'll weaponize evolution. Control it. He met Vasquez's gaze. You started this. Now help us end it. For a long moment, the scientist said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. Arden's final move. Days later, Arden's signal resurfaced. He had gathered what was left of his forces, rallying those still desperate for power. And then he made his move. A broadcast, transmitted across the world. His face appeared on every screen. Humanity has failed, he declared. But it's not too late. The hydro transformation was only the beginning. And those who still believe in our future, join me. He smiled. I have the key. Elias felt a cold dread settle in his chest. What key? Dane whispered. Vasquez paled. The original formula, he said. The one that never degraded. Elias's blood ran cold. Arden wasn't looking to transform humanity anymore. He was looking to replace it. The last battle. Elias and Dane tracked Arden down before he could release the perfected hydro strain. The final confrontation wasn't a war of superhumans. It was a battle of ideas. Elias didn't fight with strength, he fought with words, truth, and conviction. You don't get to decide who evolves, Arden, he said. No one does. For the first time, Arden looked uncertain. The soldiers behind him, once loyal, began to hesitate. Dane stepped forward. This isn't about power. It's about who we are. The moment hung heavy. And then, Arden made his final mistake. He tried to inject himself with the perfected hydro strain. But Vasquez had altered it. Instead of ascending, Arden collapsed, his body rejecting the transformation. His own ambition had destroyed him. And with that, the war was over. The lesson that remained. Elias stood on the ruins of Arden's fallen empire, staring at the sunrise. Humanity had survived. Not because of hydro weapons. Not because of transformation. But because they had chosen to be better. Dane stood beside him. So what happens now? Elias exhaled. We rebuild. We move forward. He turned to her. Without shortcuts. Without hydro. Just us. Dane nodded, a small smile forming. That's a future worth fighting for. And as the sun rose, Elias knew. True power wasn't about what changed you. It was about what revealed who you truly were.